Hello, everyone. It's 2 o'clock. Let's get started. My name is Mary Collier. I'm the Professional Development Program Manager at the Ontario Museum Association, and I would like to welcome you to our Synchronous Virtual School Programming Workshop this week. As an organization of provincial scope, the Ontario Museum Association recognizes that its members and community live and work on the lands and territories of Indigenous peoples. Toronto, where the OMA offices are located, is the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Wendat. The territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement and is also covered by the Toronto Purchase. I would like to acknowledge that I'm participating today from Anishinaabe territory on land covered by Treaty 11. And as you participate, we invite you to reflect on the land that you are on, who the traditional keepers of the land are, what the treaty relationship is, or if you're on unceded territory. So wherever you're joining from today, I hope that you are well and ready for a good conversation. Today's workshop will be an hour and a half, and the purpose of this workshop is to explore some of the tips and tricks for creating engaging and sustainable synchronous virtual school programs that meet teacher needs and your museum's goals. And so if you joined us last week, it's a bit of a continuation of the same conversation, so welcome back. But if you missed last week, you can go back and watch that in a little bit once we get the recording ready. As you will have noticed when you signed in, this session is being recorded as well. However, only Christina's presentation components will be made public after the fact. So any of the participant discussion will be edited out and not be distributed. So please do feel free to participate. Your questions, your comments, and discussions won't be included in the recording. There will be an opportunity for discussion and Q&A. If something pressing comes up as we go, put it in the chat and we can address it if it's sort of pressing at the time, but there will also be some time at the end for Q&A. I'll make some quick announcements following the discussion and we'll wrap up around 3:30. There we go, there's my next slide. If you would like to ask a question, you can either use the raise hand feature or type your question into the chat. And if you would like to say hello to your colleagues on the call, you can chat with them using the chat feature as well. As we are in meetings mode today, I would ask that you keep yourself muted unless you're asking a question, just so that we can avoid having any background noise. My colleague Megan Brome will be keeping an eye on the chat as well. And if you have any technical questions, we'll try to give you a hand. There are automated captions enabled today that you can access by clicking on the CC button at the bottom of your screen. And this webinar is part of the Small Bytes initiative. So Small Bytes, supporting digitization in Ontario's smaller and rural museums, is an initiative of the Ontario Museum Association funded by the Department of Canadian Heritage. And with this initiative, we are trying to provide accessible, high quality, build digital capacity and skills in Ontario's smaller and rural museums to increase accessibility to their collections through digital initiatives. And we look forward to sharing some more news about other upcoming webinars soon, so please do stay tuned. We started this series on virtual school programming a few weeks ago. So if you missed the session about kind of decision making to see if virtual school programming is right for you, please do go back and revisit the recording of the session that Christina, Karen Taylor from the Canadian Canoe Museum, and Michael Furtick from Connected North participated in. Christina also created a worksheet for that webinar that can help you through the decision-making process. And I ask Megan to drop the Small Bytes webpage link into the chat so you can go and find the resources from previous webinars as well. And then last week's session was about asynchronous school programs, the kind that you create and teachers essentially deliver on their own. So this week we'll be getting into virtual school programs that you deliver live to students. So I am very pleased to welcome back today Christina Sydorko, Education Program Coordinator at the Oil Museum of Canada. And I will hand it over to Christina to get started.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. So I'm joining you today from Sarnia. We are on Treaty 30 of the Anishinaabe for the Huron Tract purchase and the Sombra Township purchase. So bear with me. I've got a wee bit of a cold. I just picked a kid up from school. So hopefully she's just resting nicely. But I'm going to share my screen. And today we're going to really talk about how do you deliver live programming? How do you get this stuff from your museum to all the different aspects of a school that is not in your community, or a school that is under a situation where they need to stay in school. So let's just get that started. So let me get my little cursor out because I love my cursor. So this is the introduction to virtual programming live sessions. So at our museum, we do offer asynchronous program, which is programming that you put on the website and they download, and it's self-directed. This is a little different. This is museum-led programming. So this is how do you deliver virtual programs live with a museum instructor delivering content to that. So these are the goals that we have today. So we're going to define synchronous programming, booking and reservation systems. Why do you need booking and reservations to prevent burnout? Tech needs. What does it mean to go live? What are some interactives to increase engagement into these programs? And pitfalls, the small stuff, and pitfalls, the big stuff. The big stuff, we're going to talk about legalities, things that you need to keep in mind from a legal protect yourself and protect the museum perspective. And then we're going to look at some useful tutorials and websites. Throughout this, I got all of your questions that you put on the registration form, and I have inserted additional slides to address those things so that we all try to cover the information that you find helpful. So most of this program is based on my personal experiences delivering programs at the Oil Museum of Canada. So it will reflect those experiences that I've had over the last year and a half. And you can do it your way, or you can take the template that I've created here and then apply it to however works for your museum and your site. So what is live synchronous program? So live or synchronous program, we've all heard that term, asynchronous and synchronous. Those are school board terms. They all love those terms, so I've adopted them. So it's where museum educators meet virtually with participants or students in real time via web conferencing tools. So today is a synchronous program. Today I'm delivering content. None of you are in the building with me. It is called a point to multi-point program. So today is a live synchronous program, point to multi-point. So from my little point here in Sarnia to wherever you may be. And there are elements of interactivity. So you are basically a guest speaker. So I always fashioned these in the old days when I was teaching. We used to have guest speakers come into our classroom. We used to have programs come into our classroom. This is essentially what you're doing. You are a guest speaker, or you're a program operative in someone else's classroom or another environment. These programs are easily adaptable to seniors' residences. I've given them in those types of situations, or seniors groups or other types of groups. So don't think that this is solely education for schools. There will be a lot of that, but these are adaptable. If you have a seniors group that you normally meet with on a regular basis, but there is an outbreak or it's a really high flu season, and the building's no longer accessible to the general public to go in, this is a way that you can still interact with those people in a safe way. So you're going to be showing up, but through a computer screen via Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, or Skype. There are so many different platforms. I'm not going to cover all of them, but they all kind of work the same way. So like Zoom and Google Meet, there are a few tricks, but they generally have a lot of the same structures. So you are going to create a program. So last week we created asynchronous programs, which are fancy slide decks that have links and all of that. I'm lazy. I have very limited amounts of time at my disposal at my site. I have a lot of things that need to be done. So I use those slide decks in my live programs. Our programs currently at the Oil Museum of Canada are free. So what you get for free is you get a museum educator to deliver the content instead of you as a teacher delivering the content. And we need to book those programs. There's only myself in the education department. I am a sole educator at the site. I can pull other people in, but really I don't have that on a regular basis. We are a teeny tiny staff and half the staff is part-time. So one of the things that you need to do before you create a program that you are delivering is you need to think about with your management team or your curatorial team, how many programs do you want to deliver? And what times would you like to book those programs? What times are you available to deliver that content? Our museum is open on Friday. It's a busy public day. Can I deke out for 2 hours? And do we have enough staff coverage for the desk? Or is that field trip day and we have in-person field trips? My personal feeling is these are just as demanding. A virtual program requires, these are exhausting. They're hard on your eyeballs, they're hard on your head. There's a lot of talking. It will hurt your jaw right here. So one of the things you need to do is to sit down with your team, or if you are just 1 or 2 people, and decide, when are we offering these programs? How many do we want to offer? Think about your communication plan and how you're going to schedule these. I would recommend from personal experience that you schedule these on days when you are not expected to do other things. So if you have a virtual programming day, it is virtual programming day, and you do not schedule them back to back. What I mean by that is if you have a program schedule, you give yourself at least 30 minutes to 60 minutes in between programs to decompress, because this is a performance. We didn't all go into museums to become performers or actors. Some of us might have, but not everybody did. And this is, virtual programming is a performance. You are leading this thing. You have to manage the crowd. And that sometimes takes, you got to psych yourself up, and then you got to calm down, and then you got to psych yourself up. Give yourself some time to decompress in between these things. You don't want to stack them because it is exhausting. There is mental fatigue and Zoom fatigue. And you want to be able to confirm bookings and remind teachers. So when you start launching these things, you're going to say, book a program. Every teacher is going to want to book that program next Tuesday at 9 a.m. And they honestly do believe, because their time is important, that their program is more important than somebody else's program. And they will fight you on the phone. What you kind of want to do is to have, okay, these are our times. And once they're scheduled and blocked in, then that's it. You offer no more. Because the problem I had is we went viral during the lockdowns, and we had teachers booking, 30 teachers were calling the museum, trying to book these programs, or emailing me directly. I don't know how they found my email, trying to log into these programs. So we stacked 5 in a day. So that's 5 hours of me talking and repeating the same things. So that's unsustainable, and it's exhausting, and it's stressful worrying about all those things. So figure out what you can do. Is it 1 or 2 days a week? Is it you just offer these at 9 a.m. on Monday mornings, or 9 a.m. on Thursday mornings before your museum or before your site's fully active? And protect yourself. It is a lot of work to have that kind of knowledge and be mentally prepared. So I recommend that you have like a Google Calendar where the times and the dates are available and the teachers book them themselves. And that then you have a system, whether it's Master Calendar or Loomly or whatever booking system that you used for automated tickets or for time ticketing during the pandemic, send automatic emails. Because if you have to email every teacher, how do you get in and all of that information, have that stuff automatically done. It just frees up your time immensely. It's a lot to put in at the beginning, but it saves you so much stress and anxiety having that figured out. This is one of those pet peeves that I have, and one of those things that I unfortunately experienced overbooking. So figure out what can you do, put an hour in between programs, maybe limit the number of programs that you do in a day. It is tiring. And get yourself some good blue light glasses, because you're going to have lighting, you're going to have screens, and all of these things impact your physical being. Your eyes get tired, your voice gets tired, your brain gets tired. So the one thing I heard everybody saying is, what are the tech needs? What do I need to get started, and how much is it going to cost? This was my temporary setup when Oil Museum was under construction. So I was a homeless museum worker. I crashed at the archives and they gave me a corner to hang out in because Oil Museum was under construction. So what do you need that's essential? Basically, if you have a laptop, that's all you need. If you have a laptop and it's got a camera in it, that's the most basic thing that you need. And make sure that your laptop's got adequate sound. Most of the new laptops do, and most of us have access to those things. If you don't have a laptop, you can use an iPad. An iPad is usable. You have to preload the program on it. So whether you preload Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or Google Meets, you have to preload that software onto it. You don't necessarily have to do that with a laptop, but those things, a camera, a microphone, and a screen. I would go a little bit further. If you're really investing into this, you can look at getting yourself a ring light or proper lighting. Today I'm cheating at home, so it's my iPhone on a stick. So it can be pretty easy, or it can be you take your camera lights from your photo place where you do all the photos of your artifacts and repurpose them. You can really repurpose technology and use this technology in multiple ways. So lighting is important. I'm vain. I want to look good and I don't want to answer questions. You look sick or kind of dead. The average grade 3 is pretty forward. If you're doing this and you're doing it over a long period of time, and this is something that you have extra money in the budget, there are a few cute pieces that make your life so much easier. One of those things is, like I said, a ring light and a second screen. A second screen makes it so much easier with Google. You can have your program loaded on one screen, and then on the second screen, you can have your meeting. So I can see all the students. I can see all of you. I can manage my meeting, and everything's separate and it kind of works cohesively. A second screen where you have that ability to have your program running and your meeting running, and you can see both, it just makes it a little bit more fluid, and it's less exhausting on your vision and your mental kind of trying to manage these things. A document camera. So in this image, you can see I have a document camera. I love bringing artifacts and showing them. I do a lot of geology demonstrations, so I love putting rocks under a document cam you can write on with. They're pretty low cost. They're very slim pieces of tech. This is an Okio cam. It was about $100 on Amazon, and it folds up neat and tidy. But what it allows me to do is to use multiple cameras and switch between those cameras to give really detailed. So I can put an artifact under there, not be constantly handling the artifact and going, hey, you see my rock? It's pretty cool. And then it's properly lit. So you can use that type of tech. You can use a green screen. You can have another really good camera. I can't stress enough the importance of a good camera. A good camera you can use for photographing artifacts, but you can also have video that you can pre-record. Headsets, green screens. You can have funky little arms. So that's what I'm using today. So I've got a funky little arm that's got my phone on it, that's got all the lights. So these things are helpful for just using what you have to to really kind of enhance the video and the audio and the interpretation. So those are the hard tech. That's the actual physical pieces that you would purchase. And this is my messy setup. And yes, there's oil all over the place. I am an oil museum. So that's what my actual setup looks like. And that's what it still looks like today, except now it's at Oil Museum and not at the archive. So platforms to use. If you're doing this and you're doing it for Ontario schools, and keep in mind that Ontario is a vast area. So Ontario's vast, Alberta, Canada's just a big place, and we kind of like to be in each other's business. So I'm in Sarnia, so I deal with Lambton Kent District School Board or St. Clair Catholic, but I like to talk to the kids in Middlesex and TDSB, and I will talk to the people in Ottawa. So you need to be a little bit adaptable. So that means you spend a day watching YouTube videos on Google Slides, Google Meets. So super secret tip, find out which platform your school district is using. I always recommend for teachers to start local and then expand. So I called up LKDSB, which is my local school district. That's where my kids go. And I said, what platform do you guys use? And they said, we drank the Google Kool-Aid. And I find most of Ontario is on the Google platform, mostly because it's free and it's easy to use. Google Slides work with Google Meets. It actually will set up so you can see your slide presentation, and then you see all the students and participants on the sidebar. I'm using Google Slides today. It's just what I'm most comfortable with. It's what works for my program and my site. The beauty of Google Slides is say your server at the museum goes down, you can still access all of your Google Slides because they live in your Google Docs, which is separate from a mainframe. Some municipalities I know have, they want everything tightly controlled and secure, and so you can have that. Mine are education slides, so they don't contain any sensitive information, and that's part of our thing. So they live in the Google Drive, and then I have hard copies sitting in the museum's mainframe. So Google Slides or PowerPoints are compatible with any of the virtual meeting platforms. PowerPoint seems to work a little bit better with Zoom, and PowerPoints work very well with Microsoft Teams. These things, what it does is it just enables different features. So the feature like you see above you where you can see your slides and all your participants, that works really well in Google when you're using Google platforms. And it's the same way with Zoom. So today I have a single screen. I can see all of my buttons across the top, and then I see you guys down the side, and then my main meet. So Apple Slideshare, I've never used it, but it's something to explore. Jamboards. Schools love jams, and Jamboards work really well with Google Meets. They just kind of tie in because the entire software system is integrated. So if you're using that, so most schools are using something like Microsoft Teams, and their different platforms are Seesaw or those types of virtual platforming. With small groups, I prefer Meets. So today there are 16 of us here. I prefer Meets for small groups. For large groups, a webinar works best. And a webinar works best because you can mute everybody. You can say, you're coming and I don't want to see your screen and I don't want to hear you. And that works good when you're getting above a 50 participant load. So once you start getting above 40 or 50, if you start getting into programs that you are delivering virtual content to 200 or 600 or 800 students, webinar format. And yes, your numbers will magically increase. And we'll get into that in a minute, and I'll tell you how they magically increase and what that's like. But this is me delivering some virtual programming. So you can see my ring lights on, I've got my screen, and I've got my show and tell all hanging out. Other tech aspects, make sure you have a solid interconnect connection. So I'm in a rural museum. I live out in the country. So we had some tech problems. Part of me suspects that might have been due to Wi-Fi. Everybody's using it and they're hanging out inside today because it's hot. Make sure you have a solid internet connection. So wherever you are in your museum, make sure it's solid. Prepare for technical difficulties and laugh about it. It's going to happen. So one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a cell number. So get a cell number for whoever your contact is. If you're doing live programs, during your booking forms, when you fill out teacher, number of students in program, grade level, then you're going to put contact information. Ask for a number so that if something goes wrong, you can pick up the phone and call them and say, Miss Smith, your program was supposed to start 10 minutes ago. Are you having technical difficulties? Or Miss Smith, the link you sent me is for your classroom and I have an outside board email address. Can you send me an instant link? Links do expire. They have time limits on them, especially from Google. So you may want that contact information saying the link doesn't work, send me a new link, X, Y, and Z. Practice. Get your tech sorted. So play with your lights, play with your sound, your cameras, your second monitors. Understand how this technology works together, how to turn it on, how to turn it off, how to switch between microphones if you're using like a Yeti mic or a lapel mic, or if you're using the microphone built into your laptop. So understand where all of that comes from. Keep in mind, I like to offer all of my programs stationary. So I pick a spot and I deliver it from that spot. So if I've decided it's Monday, the museum's closed, I want to deliver it from the gallery. I'm going to test the Wi-Fi. And then I'm going to frame my shot. So I'm going to sit where I can have my shot framed and I'm going to stay there. One of the things is moving in a space, unless you have a gimbal or some other device like that, that is like a steady cam, it can be very disorienting. We've all had conversations with younger family members or children that are in charge of a camera through a Facebook or, person-to-person video calling on your phone. And it's just like if you're moving your hand around, you're getting a little motion sickness. And we never know who's on the other end. So be very aware that moving in a space where it's the camera moving can be disorienting for the viewer. It's okay if you do it once, like if you have it on, so say you wanted to move about your gallery, I'd put your camera or your laptop on a trolley or a cart so that it's steady, and say you wanted to move from point A to point B, you push the cart, or you have an assistant push the cart, and then it's less disorienting. It's that up and down and movement that gives people motion sickness. Do a couple practice runs. You can practice with somebody in your building. You can practice with your colleagues. I practiced with my kids. So give yourself, you don't have to do the program, but you do need to run through how the tech works before you launch your first program. So be familiar with Google Meet, practice using Zoom, practice using Microsoft Teams, because when I do these programs, I'm a guest in somebody's school. The teachers often, according to my local school board, want to be in control of their classrooms. So they invite me in. So I never know with our virtual programs what platform I will be using that day. I like to live a little dangerously and I want to be as inclusive as possible. So instead of saying, I don't want to use Google and limiting who can participate in my programs, I removed that barrier and I trained myself to use all three. I didn't do it all at once. It took me a lot of time. I screwed up a couple. Poor Ottawa. They are a Microsoft Teams board. Sometimes my sound worked, sometimes my videos worked, sometimes I didn't know. The kids will tell you how to fix things. They are very, very savvy after the last 2 years of virtual online learning. They know this stuff better than you do, and often you can just ask them. Ms. Sydorko is having some trouble here. Do you know how to get the sound to work? And they'll say, go up to the more button and click this and click that, and then you can share your sound. Or your Jamboard's not working, you got to share permissions to edit. These things happen. Interactives. You'll notice I don't have any in them today. It's because I want to actually talk to you later. And I didn't set this up. So when I set it up myself, it's just a lecture until you include some interactive engagement pieces. Which ones can you do? A lot of them are free, and a lot of them you have to pay for. Kahoot and Bluekit and quizzes.com. They're awesome. You got to pay for them. Quizzes.com is awesome for point to multi-point. We are seeing a shift as we speak right now that we are experiencing less point to multi-point programming. So students are now back in their classrooms. So it's called now a point to point. So Kahoot, Bluekit, and Quizzes don't work so well unless everybody has a device. This is really important for understanding the type of program, a point to point or a point to multi-point. If it's multi-point, you can drop the Quizzes, the Kahoot, or the Bluekit in the chat, and everybody can access it and everybody can use it. It doesn't work so well if you are zooming into a classroom and the teacher has thrown you and your presentation up on the whiteboard and nobody has a device. The teacher is controlling the device. These interactives don't work so well. So it's more like the way that you would do interactives with the museum. You'd use your voice, you'd ask some questions, you'd ask some volunteers, you'd stand up, you do the hokey pokey. If you're doing more multi-points, Padlet and Slido. Slido is lovely, and it works with both Google and Microsoft Teams, and you can create word clouds. You can do all sorts of funky stuff, animations, countdowns. It's got some really neat features into it, and it's free on a small scale, and if you want additional features, then you pay for the pro level. Jamboards, awesome. Except I screwed them up last week, so I didn't feel like using them this week. Group discussions, very interactive. So sometimes you will stop your Slideshare and say, what interactives have you worked? What do you like? Do you like quizzes? Do you like games? Often I'll throw a video or an audio recording in. That gives me a break from talking. Breakout rooms, you can use breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are great for adults. I hate them for students. And this is a very particular to me. I find that if you don't have adult supervision with grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you will get issues of bullying or off-task behavior or things that are not appropriate happening in those breakout rooms. And I don't ever want a museum program to be subject to bullying or harassment. So I don't use them with middle school grades or anybody that's kind of in the elementary panel where you kind of need some constant supervision. It works well with grade 12s. It works really well with grade 11s. It works well with university and adults. It doesn't work well with the young kids. They just don't have that internal control. I also put movement breaks. So teachers, we're adults. We are more than capable of sitting here going, yeah, I'm enjoying this. No, I don't agree. So you can often say, we're going to be pump jacks. Put your arms up. And I want you to start pumping oil. So we start rocking. And we talk about a lever. Where would be your pivot point? Well, your pivot point's down here. So that is your center of gravity, and that's your pivot point. Where's the angle of force? It's up here. And then where's your load? It's over here, because this is pulling it up and down. That's the actual pump. So you can use movement. We can talk about, an example. We talk about jigging on down and how do you drill for oil. The early guys, they used treadles. So I want you to lift your feet up, like a Stairmaster, and you can get some movement in. If you're with the really little guys love it. So kindergartens, grade 1s and 2s, you can do songs and hand actions, and you can lead a lot of movement based, and you can see them. Okay, so you can see what's going on. These are teacher tricks that you can add into it, and you can put polls. If you set up your own Google Slides, or if you set up your own Meets, you can throw polls in. So you can poll all the students. I could have polled all of you if I felt like it. Who's doing virtual programming? Who's not doing virtual programming? What are your goals with virtual programming? And you could have a poll and you could get an instant feed. Who's learned about oil? Who knows that there's an oil museum in Ontario? So you could ask these types of questions and you can get instant feedback. But one of the questions I got when you guys were all registering is, what do you do if you're staring into the void or black death of tiles? The tiles of death, the black tiles of death. I experience the black tiles of death almost every presentation. And it can be discerning because as educators, as museum people, we live off of the reactions and seeing all of our audience. We're performers, we're teachers. You need that audience interaction. And it can be discerning and it can be heartbreaking to see nothing but black tiles. But often students are turning off their screens, their video cameras to save bandwidth because they don't have enough data. Sometimes it's because they're still in their pajamas and they don't want to be viewed. Sometimes it's because there's a lot going on in their house. They're set up in the kitchen, mom's cooking, dad is helping brother or sister, or somebody's having a temper tantrum in the back, and you don't need to see that. Sometimes it is just a class of slugs. Okay, sometimes you have slugs. And that is my kind of way. We've all taught those classes where everybody just, and it doesn't matter what you do, they just sit there and they don't care. They're done. It's June. They would much rather be eating ice cream. So sometimes you are delivering a monologue, filling time, and it gives the teacher a break. That is not a problem. That is what you're doing. That is what you're doing today. You are enabling that teacher to have a breath. You're delivering educational content, and you may not know, because they're all grade 6s and they're being cool, if it's hitting or missing its mark. You'll find out 3 weeks later when they come with their family because they were being too cool for school with their cameras off or their black tiles, or they're sitting in their PJs. You can still interact with that group using the chats, using quizzes, using word clouds, using Jamboards. Often these additional features add accessibility. It means the quiet kid that always gets talked over, they may be typing that verbal conversation that they're too afraid to have. It may be they are very cozy and they are paying attention because they're in a cozy situation and they don't have to sit in a chair at a table. They may be in their bed or in their puff pillow or something. So these black tiles, there's nothing in that against you as a presenter. That often is those participants saving bandwidth. They may not have enough data. It may be there's just too much visual stimulation. And sometimes they are slugs. There's nothing wrong with that, and that is nothing to say against your program. You will find out that feedback later. Pitfalls. I've screwed up many a time, and that is normal when we're dealing with something new like this technology. This technology is so new. But one of the things is keep it short, keep it focused. There is such a thing as Zoom fatigue, and we saw that with all of our students during the pandemic, when we started this, there's too much screen time. And we say that kind of facetiously because kids love screens. They love phones. They don't enjoy always being talked at. They don't always enjoy these many different types of presentations where you have to sit there for hours. So keep it short, keep it tight. 4 timelines. Little guys, those are your primary grades, your SKs, your JKs, your 1, 2s, and 3s. 30 minutes. That's the attention span at the top end. Once you get beyond that, 60. I would normally go for 45. So my presentations for school groups, doesn't matter how old they are, they're 45 minutes with question and answer at the end. Oftentimes, if it is a group where you can see them and they're fidgety, you cut it down and then you can see what's going on. Check your surroundings. So my background is fuzzy because I am in my personal home and I don't want everybody's favorite hobby to read the books on my bookshelf. Check your background, especially art museums. What's in the background? How does it look to a grade 4 that loves cracking jokes? Think about you, like, are you saying something and it was this funky word, but it looks, it's cut off, so above your head it says fart, because they're going to only focus on that. Or is there something that looks like a toilet or a nude? We do want to encourage people to explore different types of art, but be prepared for those conversations. So check your surroundings. Is there anything inappropriate? Like something that's, you know, a cutoff word that says something. Check your lighting, check your sound. I've had so many kids ask me if I'm dead, and it's just because I haven't had enough coffee that day. So a bright light makes you look better. Your clothing, try not to have anything written on it because everybody's going to be staring at your chest trying to read what's written on it. Solid colors work best for video. Stripes, patterns, it's distracting and the video cameras don't pick them up that well. I would also advise against green screen green and green screen or blue screen, because you don't want somebody to edit something over top of your video. So I try to avoid wearing green screen green and blue screens. So those are the two, kind of that cobalt blue and that green screen green, because we don't want anybody to edit our things in the aftermath. Ensure your program won't be interrupted. This is really important. It's a program just like any other, and I know it's sitting at your desk and it doesn't look like to anybody on the outside that you're doing the work. You are. So you don't need the general public walking behind you, giving the bunny ears, and you don't need your coworkers photobombing you or moving sets or loud sounds or the construction crew drilling the new door or pulling out the concrete. You don't want to be interrupted, and your microphone will pick up everything. Microphones on the new laptops and the Yeti mics are really sensitive, and they will pick up conversations from around the world, across the room. So put yourself in a room with a door or a heavy curtain or an area where you will not be disturbed. Just because you never know, and you don't want a coworker to be bending over to pick up something and it's a plumber situation. The last bullet here. Currently, the Oil Museum of Canada is offering free programs, and it's we do that for a myriad of different reasons, and it's part of our mandate to remove barriers. But we have booked these programs. When we first started, we were playing around with the ideas of how do we monetize these things? Should we monetize these things? We noticed that a school will book a program, and they would have said that there are 30 students on it. And magically the numbers start growing. So you can see in your participants who's there. And in Google, I have noticed that one teacher will book a program and they will be sharing their screen. but you will see that there might be 3 other teachers and they are sharing, your program is being shared with 30 other students. So instead of it being 30 students, you are dealing with 90 students. So that's what I mean by programs can magically increase throughout the presentation compared to the original. This is, sometimes it's called Zoom bombing or photo bombing, but sometimes it is teachers trying to save money or save resources, or this was a really cool idea, and walking across the hall saying, Cindy, here's the link, join, or I will send you a link to a different meet, and they can share their screens and therefore. So it's one of these things, if you are going to be monetizing these programs, to be aware of is that attendees can magically increase and decrease. And be prepared for that. You can be thinking that you're delivering a program to 30 students, and it's actually 30 teachers who are sharing their screens to another 30 students. That's really good for my programming numbers. It is quite stressful if you don't have forward knowledge of that. So that is something to be aware of. That is something to be aware of when you're booking and you have your booking forms or your contracts that you send out to these participants. Pitfalls, the big stuff. For point to multi-point, this is where you need to have put some thought in before you start delivering. You need to realize, as a museum, virtual programming takes place in private spaces of someone's home. Virtual meets are very intimate, and people will log on from quiet spaces. Children love meeting in their bedrooms. That is where some kids, they have their desk. So you need to have kind of a moral code and a protect yourself. This is, you know, kids are in their homes, they're comfortable, but you want to protect yourself and protect the museum, and you don't meet alone. Always ensure that there are 2 adults present, whether that is the teacher and yourself, or that is 2 museum professionals. You don't want to be caught online alone, you and a student in the privacy of their bedroom. Don't do that. Okay. Your mind can wander and ask all these important questions. I'm telling you, really think about, so I'm Zooming with adults today, so I'm doing it from my home office. But when I'm doing school programs, I'm always at the museum. I'm always at, so if it's not the museum, it's an archive. It is a very public space. It is a public building. And I always join meets for schools as a guest. So my organizing group is the school board. So it is the teacher that invites me in. I don't join the meets until the teacher is there. I make sure that I always have that 2 adult minimum when meeting with students. And it's just one of those things, you never know, a kid might forget their cameras on, and we've had many politicians do that. And I don't know if this is being recorded or if it's not being recorded, and you never want to be in a situation where you have a student changing or anything. Don't meet alone. Okay. Organizing groups. So because I go in as a guest, I do that for very particular reasons. One, organizing groups should have permissions for students to be on camera. Or to be recorded before participating in a program. Many students are a part of our legal system, and their parents or guardians may not have given permission for them to be photographed or recorded, or to have any photographs or recordings of the students. So this includes appearing on camera for a virtual meet. That's why you should never get too upset if you see the black tiles. It may be that a student is in a situation that we have no knowledge about, and they are part of a legal system or a protection situation, and they do not have their cameras on because they do not want for whatever variety of reasons to be recorded. And that could be parental permissions, legal permissions, and I don't record my meets because I don't have those prerequisite permissions. If I did, I would send permissions to record. So if we recorded our meets for the Oil Museum with students, it's different with grown-ups. With students, I would have, it's the same way that you have permission to photograph permission or photo release forms. You would have to have those same types of forms for a virtual meet. Behavioral expectations. The reason why I don't use breakout rooms is because I am aware that bullying is an ever-present thing in our schools. Behavioral expectations need to be outlined before the start of a program. Sometimes it's just a written document that you throw on your website. Sometimes it is unofficial, and sometimes if you're a guest, you don't need that. But you should have clear bullying and anti-harassment policies in place. What happens, and I don't ever want to suggest that I've seen this, but I've talked to other museum professionals around the world, particularly in the United States. What happens if you see abuse? What happens if you see a kid get smacked? Those are things that you need. I have a duty report because I hold my teaching license. Those are things that you need to be aware of when you are going into these types of situations. You are going to see the intimate nature of the inside of somebody's home. You're going to see poverty. You're going to see all of these different things. So you need to have a situation where if you see abuse, what is the role of you as a museum professional in this situation? That's why you always have two adults present. So normally I'm like, I'm the guest. And then I'm like, I back the teacher up. I'm like, you have a duty report. I will, it is you that reports abuse or something like that. So that kind of takes the load off my plate. However, if your museum is setting up your own needs, then the onus is on you. So think about, have these conversations with management, with staff. What are your policies? Pray it never happens. And I've delivered programming to 5,000 students, well over 5,000 students now. I've never seen it. However, I have heard of this happening. So it is something that you need to have these conversations about. We don't live in la land. We don't live in a perfect society. I've seen things in these programs that, while not requiring legal action, do give you pause. And that's a lot of it is, I'm talking about rocks. And 3 slides back in my Jamboard, I have 500 pictures of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I don't want to see his Johnson. So these are things that you kind of have to be aware of. That's why I have rules, and that's why I have things that are I am a control freak, tightly controlled, because I don't want to be in any sticky situations. So group chats should relate to presentations. I see group chats, I've seen harassment, and I've called the kid out. And then I've told the teacher, I said that's not acceptable. And I actually will stop a presentation to say, these are the rules, and it shall only be on topic behavior, and we call people by appropriate names, and we don't use this type of language, and I find it unacceptable. And sometimes it's because the teachers become so normalized to it, or they just feel impotent or whatever. You need to have your own standards for what's behavior and what is acceptable. So like we don't use certain words, and those are things that you need to be the leader in. Okay. Monetizing. Let's leave some of that complicated nature alone. How do you get people to pay for it? You bill them. You have a registration form, and on my registration forms, I have addresses. I have school names, I have school boards. If you decide to charge for your programs, you can put number of students. You will see how many students are in there. Like I said, you can see them magically appear or not magically appear, but you can bill flat rate, $3 a minute is what I've seen some museums do. So it's $3 to $5 a minute per the program. You can do, like, the program is $200, and it doesn't matter how many students you put in there, it is $200. You can sell tickets through online ticketing events such as Everbright. And often we've built schools. So schools are asking for something special, we'll build them. And sometimes the way that we build them is, you know, it's $3 a child admission to the oil museum. That's what we're billing. So if you have 24 kids times 3, that's your bill. And quite often, a lot of schools will be willing to pay that because they don't have to pay for the bus. They don't have to pay for insurance. You at, you know, 24 or $75, that's a cheap interactive for the schools. So, or you can have it as part of a teacher subscription. So if you are selling subscriptions to your educational catalog, to your educational programming, maybe you have this as part of your teacher subscriptions, that they get a free virtual program or a free live. So you get access to your lesson plan bank, and then you get access to a live. So you can do all of those different things. It's actually not that hard, especially because you have a registration form and you put it on your website and it's there. You could have it so that you sell it just like you sell e-tickets. So if you have a system for your museum that you can book and pay online for your tickets, you can do that. And it depends on, you need to cover your staff hours, and then the time that your staff put into developing it. So, and then it depends. Do you want to just break even, or do you want to generate revenue? So I know a lot of different groups started out with free. They now have got the confidence in their programs to start charging, or they've started charging low levels, and then every 6 months or every year, the fees are increasing till they reach that magic threshold where, like, that's too expensive. But schools now have money, and there is this type of training that if it is a valuable program and they can save money on a bus and they can have an experience, especially if you show up in costume. I put costumes on all the time, and it adds that extra little wow factor, or if you're leading something that's really interactive, schools will pay for it. Program evaluation. What do you do at the end, and how do you know if you did okay? I send out surveys. I love a good survey monkey. So you can send out surveys and you ask the questions with mandatory fields. And normally for teachers, you should send them the survey 3 times, because they're gonna say, oh, I'll do it later, and they forget. And then, you know, it's June. So send out your surveys. You can also see whether students are engaging. You can see if they're asking questions. You can see if they are responding to what you are saying. You can see if your programs are really good, because if you've met a chatty teacher and they told all their friends, so you can look up the number of bookings and the data metrics. You can talk. So I normally hang on a meet 5 minutes after the students all go, and I'm chatting with the teacher. I'll say, how did it go? Were they liking it? And she'll tell me yes or no, or he'll tell me yes or no, or they'll tell me yes or no. So that person will tell you that. Some are not going to, but some will. And it's all about data. Did it achieve the goals? My goals with virtual programming are different than your goals. My goal with virtual programming is to make sure people know about the Oil Museum and the resources of my community. 5 years ago, nobody knew an oil museum existed in Ontario, let alone that the first commercial oil well was here in Oil Springs. That was my goal. My goal was kind of, nobody knows about us, and I want everybody to know about us. And how do I get this site known? That was my goal. It wasn't to make money or anything. It was just like, teachers are crying because they don't know what to do, and I shall help them. I wanted my programs in a textbook, so let me write the textbook. Also, is it an optimal use of staff time? If you've put all the effort into blocking off time for your staff to deliver these things, and it's Tuesday and nobody's booking programs, don't count June and September. Those months don't count. Those months don't count because A, teachers are wrapping stuff up. It's field trip season, and September, they're crazy just getting students started. But think about, if you're not getting any bookings, is it an optimal use of class time or staff resources? Are you enjoying delivering the content? Is the content achieving your goals? Is nobody booking? Is nobody booking because the program is not viable, or is it because you're not advertising it properly? And like I said, I advertise using social media because it's cheap and cheerful. And you can ask me some questions about it at the end. This is my favorite part. I'm telling you exactly how I did it. I went to YouTube. These are all, I will copy this and send it to Mary, and you guys can watch all of these. These are YouTube tutorials that were made by teachers and other professionals. So these are how to use a Google Meet, how to create stop motion in Google Slides. You could do stop motion animation. It was fun. I use it because I want to animate something. I want to show you how oil comes out of the ground, but I'm not an animator. So this is how you can do it very, very simply and cheaply. Bitly. So this is how you do your data metric tracking. So Bitly, all of my programs have bit links in them. Bitly is a link shortener. And so when I put a program on the website or I share it with the teacher, I track it. So I know how many people have accessed that program. How many people are accessing it on Facebook? How many people are accessing it this way? You can use YouTube. So my programs all have YouTube videos, sometimes inserted into them. So I tracked how many people have watched that video. Interactive Google Slides. How do you put hyperlinks, hyperdocs? How do you make them interactive and jump around? How do you create an interactive screen with a home page? This is how you do that. And remove.bg. Share this with your collections friends. How do you remove the backgrounds? So in many of my programs, I put artifacts from the collection. So I took a picture of the artifact, I removed the background, it creates a PNG image, and I drop it in my slides so that when I drop it in there, you can see the artifacts. Bitmoji, that is my little avatar. So while you see me talking to you, I also have that digital avatar because sometimes she's just funny and I enjoy it. And so I create things. Questions from the registration. Smaller versus bigger programs? It's whatever you're comfortable with. And do I use volunteers? Nope. I'm at a unionized museum. We do have volunteers for some things. This is something that is so new and really intensive that I don't use volunteers for it. I do all of it myself. That's because to find a volunteer at the oil museum, it's kind of difficult right now. We're a rural museum and we're just getting back into the game. So I don't use volunteers because of the training involved. Do I want to? Yes. Will I kind of steal some of my coworkers and train them how to do this? Most definitely. Is it happening now? No, I just don't have the resources. We are a tiny museum. And so that means that we have limited availability. You can only book programs from me on Mondays and Tuesdays, and there are 3 time slots each day. So there's a 9:15, there's an 11 o'clock, and there's a 1:30. That's it. So once those are gone, those are gone. Just because I don't have the resources or the time or the volunteers that have the dedication to do it. If you're doing these types of programs with volunteers, you need a very dedicated volunteer. And some of you are really lucky and you have that. And some of us are really just struggling for volunteers. So we've talked about program length. Little guys, 30 minutes, big kids, 45 with question and answer. You guys are really big kids, so this is long, I'm sorry. How do you balance teacher-directed learning versus student-directed learning? So sometimes, especially with my rock program, I send out, because there's a registration, I'll email the teacher first, and I said, tell all the kids to go find a rock. And we're going to talk about your rock. And I want every kid to show me their rock. And we're going to describe the rock. And then we'll do an activity together using the Jamboards or using the chats, or I will stop sharing and then we will share together as like in a group session or like a circle. So we were in school, you all sat in the mat and you had a circle and everybody took times. Use the teacher as a moderator. They're there, they have to be there, they're legally required to be there. I'm going to use them. They're getting paid. I'm not. At least I'm not getting paid but school teacher money. So use them, you know, call on your students, have your students raise your hand. And if it's in the classroom, they're there, use them as a resource. So my rock, this is my dad rocks. Why did you choose this rock? Why do you like this rock? And everybody gets to share. And then you put it all on a Jamboard. What were my most successful programs? So this was one of the questions in the registration. Conservation of energy is by far my best program. It makes sense to have an energy program come from an oil museum. It's what we do. So we talk about energy resources and conservation and why you shouldn't drive your car to the corner store and on a day like today, maybe you should walk. So we talk about those things, and those are things that we really do well. Simple machines. So early settlers, everybody gotta have an early settlers program. It's one that our local schools really dig. So we do a lot of them, but also simple machines. I talk about simple machines in the oil fields. I have lots of examples from our collection. And then our next programs are environmental resource management and geology. Oil Museum is a little different than some others. We are really pivoting and leaning into the science aspect that our site lends itself to. We really do talk about the environment and oil and pollution. We really talk about energy and wind and oil and coal and greenhouse gases. Those are things that we do. And geology just lends itself well because oil is a geologic resource. It comes out of the ground. You need to understand your rocks in order to understand it. This is all my contact information. If you have questions, concerns, friends, nobody at my museum wants to talk to me about virtual programming anymore. I love talking about this. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. And they're all like, oh, please, we don't want to hear about Zoom. So I have free time this summer. You can call me, I'll chat with you. I'm going to stop sharing so we can ask questions.